With Be Quiet's recent release of their new FX line, we got an excellent AIO and an excellent air cooler, both of which are actually just upgrades of previously available products, but pushed to their limits by replacing the existing fans with fancy new Be Quiet light wings. But there's also another category that can be tuned. Cases. So Be Quiet took their very well established mid-tier Pure Base 500 DX, threw away those laughable entry-level Pure wings and replaced them with higher performance, more RGB, more fan blade Be Quiet Lightwings 120s and 140s. And to make sure that everybody notices it, they threw away the D and replaced it with an F. This means that, just like with every other piece of FX hardware, we are looking at the exact same thing, just with a different set of fans. This also means that the opinion or measurements taken based on the fan will solely apply to this exact model. However, everything else is the same and everything else will be the same. Therefore, it will also apply to the regular DX model as far as the fan is not concerned. If you were planning to replace the fans anyway, yeah, then it doesn't really matter, but at the same time, why would you buy or pay the premium for an FX in the first place then? Okay, with that out of the way, let's get to that pretty damn beautiful case. Out of the box, the case comes with the usual accessories, a pretty well thought through manual, and some screws, straps, and the installation material. Standing on its pretty tall and robust feet, this mid-tower case is 463mm high, 232mm wide, and 450mm deep, which roughly translates to 48 liters, give or take, because the front panel is kind of rounded off and the 450 length was measured using the longest part. The front of the case is covered in the same type of high airflow see-through mesh material with two ARGB strips going from top to bottom and a silver Be Quiet logo slapped on top. Looking from the top, we got the AIO panel positioned on the front panel portion. One USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C, the usual mic in and out, a big fat and clicky start button, like it's hella clicky, followed by an ARGB button. Now, although I said that the AIO is positioned on the front panel portion, yeah, that's not really true. It looks like it is, but once you remove the front panel, it turns out that it's not really, which is great. Cables going into the front panel or being attached to the front panel are a real mess. And this also applies to the front ARGB strips. Instead of annoying every living creature with cables, Be Quiet took the push-pin approach, where the front ARGB strips connect once the front panel is slapped back on, which is great. Keep doing that. Everybody! The left side of the case is where we will start to see why it is called a pure base and not a dark base. Although the glass is sufficiently thick, it is mounted down using the decade-old slap the glass on there and try to make those rubbers go through the holes and fiddle these screws on there and yeah, just try to keep it from falling down approach. Of course, you could also just lay the case down and do it that way, which would not create any danger for the glass nor your toe. But this is one of the aspects that gets lost if you want to create a mid-tier budget-focused case. However, this is also pretty much the only thing that I found that looked like budget to me. Inside we'll find the usual compatibility, ATX, MATX and Mini ITX. Everything neatly noted down on the motherboard plate. The 7 removable and reattachable PCIe brackets are hidden behind a little plate that can be moved away using the thumb screws. For those 7 PCIe slots, we can use GPUs that are up to 369mm long. Although this is really plenty, cause I have a 3080 Ti in here and it looks gorgeous. Keep in mind that this was also measured all the way to the front fans, meaning that if you would slap a radiator behind those front fans, this will then reduce the amount of GPU length by the radiator thickness. On the CPU cooler side, it looks just as good. Up to 190mm high coolers is, yeah, well, good luck trying to find something that exceeds that. Now, when looking at Be Quiet's case lineups, we have, for example, a Silent Base 802 or Dark Base 900 Pro. Both of which were amazing, or in the very least, very interesting cases. However, out of the box, ignoring this little replacement panel, those are kind of high front airflow cases, but with an extreme emphasis on silence thanks to those acoustically sealed front panels that Be Quiet slaps onto everything. The pure bass 500FX on the other hand is just raw airflow. Everything on here is built to get the air in and out. The front panel is very high air let through with a removable fabric dust filter behind it. The top of the case got a very nicely built metal mesh filter with a beautiful plastic enclosure built around, which conveniently houses the magnets cause this thing is magnetic. The PSU shroud has a huge amount of little triangles cut out that allow the GPU to breathe a bit through the massive fabric dust filter of the PSU. And the fan support is just as good. 3 120s or 2 140s in the front, 2 120s or 2 140s in the top, and either a 120 or 140 in the back. And yes, the top grille is extremely big, way bigger than what you would potentially fill out with a double 140mm fan setup. Great for natural heat convection. However, very sadly, you cannot fit a Nokia NF820 in there. That would have been great, but it just doesn't work. And while we are at it, this is also the point where the biggest, or the only difference between a pure bass 500DX and 500FX pops up. In the original one, there were 3 140mm pure wings 2 included. One in the front, one in the top, and one in the back. For the 500DX, on the other hand, Be Quiet replaced those fans with a bunch of light wings. 3 120mm in the front and a 140mm in the back. Now, I'm not saying that the pure wings were bad. They are great, get for free fans. The light wings, on the other hand, are just pretty damn good. In both cases, front and back, we will get the regular speed models, meaning up to 1700 at 41 CFM and 1.6mm of H2O for the front fans, and 1500 RPM at 56 CFM and 1.5mm of H2O for the back one. And considering how well those fans performed, combined with the fact that the front is very, very air let through, this actually sets you up for good. There will be more than enough air going in the front and going out in the back to get the most powerful rig started without any additional fan. If you haven't seen our Lightwing reviews, this is also the perfect spot to continue after this video, but to conclude them, it was very wise for Be Quiet to take the regular speed models. You don't need more, and they are pretty silent, especially that 140mm mod. Now, of course, you could add more fans, nothing is stopping you, and as you see right next to me in the building video that we did like this morning, you can completely fill this thing with Lightwing, but you will not make a huge gain out of it. The only upgrade that I would recommend doing would be to add a single 140mm exhaust Lightwing in the top. That way you will be sure that you have enough air that gets out, and you'll just help the natural heat convection with some of that good old force. But on the other hand, without the 2 or even 1 top fan, this pretty much sets you up for good with a lot of gear. As we are already on the subject of fans, let's talk about the ARGB overdose that you will be getting with this. Just like any other FX piece of hardware, the main focus of the 500FX is ARGB. The front ARGB was already there, but thanks to the light wings, we got a lot more. Not to forget that there is also a hidden ARGB strip sitting behind the metal part where the glass touches, cause you know, it's barely seeable, but okay, it basically just illuminates the side of my light wings. Because yeah. To get all of that ARGB and all of the fans going, Be Quiet doesn't leave you hanging. In the back of the case, Be Quiet added an ARGB and fan controller. Out of the box, all of the fans and the ARGB signal, as well as the front and motherboard lighting strips are pre-connected. The only thing that you need to do is connect the SATA cable to get everything going and letting the controller handle everything. And then a PWM and a 3-pin ARGB signal to your motherboard in case you are grown up and you want to control everything yourself. All in all, the controller can house up to 6 fans and 6 ARGB signals. Subtract the pre-installed stuff, you are looking at a leftover of 2 ARGB and 2 PWM signals, which conveniently is the exact amount of fans you can add into this case before you just stack them inside for no reason other than providing you with a good enough argument to be approved for disability checks. Wow, somebody thought this through. Great! On a very small side note, as you probably know, one of the aspects of PWM fans is that you can properly read their signal basically, which will be then reflected in your fan controlling software. However, for both the vast majority of fan controllers and basically every PWM splitter in existence, it will only read the signal of the first fan and just forward the information in a percentage value of the max speed to the next one. Now this doesn't mean a lot, it just means that if you take 3 fans spinning at different speeds and you hook them up to the same splitter or controller, you will only get the real RPM number of the first fan. So even though every fan will be spinning at, let's say, 80%, the RPM number that is reflected in your software will only be true for the first one. However, somebody messed something up and the port marked as F1 or fan 1 is not utilized. So although everything will be working fine, your readout will just be gibberish. So do yourself a favor and take the cable of the 140mm fan and hook it up to the fan 1 port, just to have some sort of readout on your motherboard software. Otherwise, that might also produce, gibberish. According to Be Quiet, they know about this and there have been changes in production to make this go away. However, this also means that there is still a batch of 500FXs out there where the port will be unutilized. So check it for yourself, move the cable and it's good. Back to the controller. If you are not into controlling ARGB yourself, you can also let the controller handle it and switch between its modes using the button of the front panel. In case that you do want to switch back to motherboard control, just long press it for 3 seconds and you're good. Now, although there is an army of different ARGB modes and colors that you can choose from, the first one is, of course, all orange Be Quiet beauty. What else could it be? Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's go to water cooling. Out of the box, Be Quiet states that you can fill this thing with quite a lot of radiators, and up to 360 or 280 in the front, a 120 or 240 in the top, and a 120 or 140 in the back. Although this is pretty much okay, considering this is a mid-tower and mid-tier case, I don't believe this case has a big focus on water cooling. Sure, radiators can be installed, however, no matter where you put it, it will come at a cost. There are pretty big cutouts for cables above the motherboard. However, if you slap a radiator on there, you basically block that thing, so you will then need to make sure to connect everything beforehand. And this is also the reason why Be Quiet doesn't say anything about 140mm sized threads in the top. Sure, they will fit, but good luck with the cables. The front also comes with radiator support. However, you can only go with an up to 240 or 280, and if you are planning to do 360, this little thing is in the way. The thing that we are talking about is the hard drive cage, and this thing can house up to 2 3.5 or 1 2.5 inch drive, which would be mounted against the top side. However, if you have seen any of my case reviews, I am not particularly a big fan of hard drives. And due to my healthy hatred for magnetic fidget spinners, I was particularly happy to see that you can remove this thing by only turning on those thumb screws behind the case and pulling it out. No screws from underneath the case. That's great. And believe it or not, but this hatred for once came with benefits. Not only did we just enlarge the maximum PSU length, which is sitting just behind it from 225 to, yeah, good luck, but we also unlocked the hidden character called 360mm AIO. So yeah, if you really want to go with water cooling inside this case, you can. But depending on the size, it might actually cost you 2 hard drive spaces. That being said, I believe the top portion is really not built for AIO. Sure, if you slap a 240mm AIO or radiator on there, it will be perfectly fine and you will be able to route the cables around it, but it just feels wrong. It will protrude, partially at least, above the motherboard. Especially if you go with something like an Arctic freezer, and that will then create a whole range of other potential issues. So do yourself a favor, and if you really need to, mount it in the front, or just don't go with water and go with air cooler. Everything inside this case just screams air cooler. But as we have already at least partially talked about it, there are more SSD spaces than you might think. The first one would be right next to the fan controller. To install it, we just need to unscrew the screw to get access behind it. And the last 2 are on this innocent looking metal plate. Now this plate is everything but innocent. It is actually very, very well thought through. On here we can mount 2 SSDs, one above that Be Quiet sign and the other one below it. And what's really cool about this is that the Be Quiet sign is actually removable. Just pinch its ends together and it will come right off, revealing the hole which now comes out just behind the motherboard area. So if your family tree doesn't have any circles in it, you can utilize this hole by mounting both SSDs with their cables pointing towards that be quiet sign and use its ultimate clean cable management properties by completely hiding away the mess you created. Now, I haven't used SSDs in a very long time. The last one I touched is like in my server, like in the room behind, so yeah, it's just not my thing. But if you are into extreme ARGB SSDs and you want that ARGB to, you know, shine all the way into your eyes, or if you have a fetish for Samsung logos, this is pretty much the perfect case. But the beauty of this bracket doesn't end with the SSDs. The left side of it doubled as a cable hiding plate, which allows you to beautifully connect your cables whilst easily hiding away your mess in the back where nobody sees it, although we all know it's there. And to finish off the cable section, ignoring the plate and the holes in the top, there are some extra holes in the bottom for your usual USB and front panel cables. And behind the case, there is also a surprising amount of space to tuck everything in. Plus, you got a healthy amount of cable straps and zip tie slots. And now to finish off the informational part of this review, the build quality is surprisingly good. Considering it's still a mid-sized, mid-tier, mid-priced case, it is actually very good. We have 4mm tempered glass, thick steel panels that don't wiggle too much, and overall the case stands on pretty solid feet without any sort of flags or damages or anything else that, you know, I might consider negative. No, everything is pretty sturdy for a case in that price category. Additionally, this is still Be Quiet we're talking about, and they still need to get rid of all of that sound dampening asbestos. So you can be damn sure that they slapped some onto the back panel to remove, maybe not a lot, but like at least some of the potential noise. Disclaimer, this is not asbestos. This is some sort of sound isolating foam. This is a joke. Be Quiet does not utilize asbestos in their products. Or at least I hope so. You know what, let's do a long time review. I will break it and then sniff it, and in 10 years we will see if I died of cancer. That being said, there is not much that I could wish for with a new version of this case. The installation method for the side panel would be the most obvious one. And the only other thing that I didn't particularly enjoy is the fact that the PSU has still that external mounting thing where you need to remove that one and then you need to mount the PSU onto the bracket and then slap the whole thing in, and it's just extra steps that I believe are kind of unnecessary. But other than that, amazing case. Build quality wise, very good, and I love the top panel filter. Compatibility wise, very good with an asterisk. You can install pretty much every hardware that you want in here. I just wouldn't recommend water cooling. For me, this is an air focused case, and that's okay for the use case. Not every case needs to be like everything, but I believe if you want to go water cooling, just look at other cases. I believe the whole bracket on the side is amazing, especially the cable management option. The I/O is very much up to date. The included ARGB and fan control is great, but most importantly, air. This thing can move some serious air out of the box. We used it in a separate build, this build, which will come out later at some point, but this thing is very good at cooling the machine out of the box. We tuned it with 2 light wings, and overall the thing is performance-wise amazing. Just to give you a heads up, there is a 5800X3D beneath it with just a pure rock FX there. Everything is cool. No problems. So for who is this case? Well, in our opinion, for basically everybody. Everybody who wants to get a decent air cooler and a very powerful case. The 190mm CPU cooler support allows you to install even the tallest air coolers, and this paired with the immense airflow that the front can push in, I just don't really see any limits. 12900K, 5900, 5950X, sure, just go for it. Paired with a good air cooler and you are all set. But okay, this should be it for Be Quiet and their all-new Pure Base 500 in its FX edition. At this point, a huge thank you to Be Quiet for sending it over. And if you haven't watched one of the other FX lineup reviews, here they are. On a side note, we now also have channel memberships, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your store for an RG poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to get some sort of medicine to cure me from whatever was caused by that ARGB overdose I was getting here. I am an all black guy, and this is definitely not all black, and now it tickles me like everywhere. I need help. Anyway, thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.